Gravity Cast.
Hey fellow gamers and artists, this is World Building Wednesdays, Episode 2, Fast Forward. In this episode, I wanted to start coloring the character we finished from Episode 1. Since we knew this character was going to be a Siamese cat, I went to the color palette and selected some colors that matched as close as possible to the reference image. So I asked the viewers what color clothes this character should wear, and many of them said yellows, golds, and browns, so that's what we went with. Next I started to do the basic steel color on the swords. To keep the gold theme going, I decided to do the inlays on the swords in a gold color. I wasn't really sure about this, but considering some really expensive watches do silver and gold, I figured I'd give it a chance. To add a pop of color, the viewers wanted to see some red on the character as well. I decided to jump ahead a little bit and talk about shading. Typically when I start this process, I make a gray fill for the character and then start doing the shading on that. This helps me focus on just light and shadow, and I can mix this with the color layer later on. You can see for this art style I wanted to keep it very light and bright, so I'm using a blue color for the shadow instead of black. So here's what it looks like mixed with the color layer. I also talked about why I chose blue as a shadow color instead of black, and showed exactly what it would look like and how it would change the mood and art style if I would have went with darker shadows. And shortly after that I had a bit of a crash, but I had my auto save feature turned on, and I only lost a couple minutes of work, so it wasn't that big of a deal. So at this point I decided to go on to the second topic, which was environments. And I gave the viewers a choice of 3 different locations on the map that we could start some concept art for. The first was Giant's Lake, the second was Mount Zen, and the last one was the Abyss of Sil Haldoon. Pretty much everyone agreed that we wanted to try the Abyss of Sil Haldoon, so we got to work. So I started off by just doing some basic concepts of what this might look like. I thought this might be interesting to make this some kind of man-made structure with a spiral staircase that would kind of wind its way all the way down. So I took a mission trip to Mexico a handful of years ago, and I thought that these underground caves called cenotes were a really interesting reference for this. So with the basic concept done, I started drawing how this might look in the actual game. I added some environmental elements around the area, and then I started adding some vegetation and vines that would kind of fall down into the abyss. I wanted to really give this a sense of scale, so I tried to change the perspective of the image a little bit so it didn't look like some hole that was like 20 feet across. This thing needed to look massive. Another thing that would help with that is to add some human-sized scale, so I added a staircase to this so you could kind of see how big it was. So there was no story to this at this point. It was just a hole with some stairs, so I want to give it some life by adding some decorative blocks to this. So with this idea in mind, I still wanted to have some reference, so I went and leaned on ancient Mayan design patterns for this, which uses a lot of alternating step type architecture and trapezoid or pyramid shapes. So I thought we could use that by making the decorative blocks trapezoid shapes that have an alternating pattern as they go around the side walls. We also had some really good questions and discussions about the Giants' world and the things they might have built and how much magic plays into the world. But we did run out of time in this episode, so I had to stop here. Since this was only episode 2, I wanted to try a different format and have 2 topics per episode, but I think I'm just going to go back to 1 topic per episode because what I essentially ended up here with was 2 projects that are now unfinished. So I hope you can join me this upcoming Wednesday when we finish our Cat Warrior character, Ra Magwan, and we then get back to finishing up the Abyss. And lastly, if this is your kind of thing and you want to see more of it, hit subscribe and check us out on social media. Thanks everyone.